Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of College Blitz here on FTSN Extra. I'm Russ Morgan, always here with my man Q from the I Hate Football podcast. Q, we didn't do it last week. So how you been doing lately? Been a couple weeks off.
All is good, brother. All is good, man. Life's good. Just working, grinding, and was looking forward to getting back on with you, man. It had been a little bit since our first episode, and just both been a little busy, man. But here we are again, man. Ready to do this thing.
Yeah, I know we had talked after the first episode. I've done a couple of these where you jump on, and the first time you meet the person you're with is like 5 minutes before you go on. So you're like, this is a little weird. But like we both said, I'm like, this was like I got off and texted him. I was like, that was really smooth, really easy. I'm like, talk a little shit. We both love college football.
100%.
We talked a little Canes tonight, which I know you're the resident Canes fan on the podcast. So I'm ready to get at it today. First, I want to ask you, being a Canes fan, what were your expectations going in with the Cam Ward signing for the 2024 season?
For me, having just gone through the trauma of Tyler Van Dyke, like I think most Canes fans did, I think all I had really to go on was really the Washington State insiders, right? What the guys on the college shows on ESPN and Fox and whatever it is, just because Cam Ward wasn't a part of the country that just didn't really resonate with me really on any level, right? When you're talking about I guess now the former Pac-12, right? They were in a time zone that just wasn't difficult, or I'm sorry, wasn't easy to follow. Really wasn't easy to watch. I mean, other games are coming on at like 10:30, 10 o'clock at night, that kind of thing. So I knew of Cam Ward because of my love for college football, but didn't really know much about him after he committed, especially when he essentially decommitted from the draft. Is kind of the way it went, right? I mean, he had declared for the draft, hadn't officially signed with an agent, which allowed him to actually withdraw his name from the draft, commit to Miami. And I started seeing the hype, kind of build, and around most people. I think some people were skeptical given some of the flaws in his game, right? People said, oh, he fumbles too much and, this and that. But I think kind of across the board, I think a lot of people were excited. And the more I heard people talk, the more I heard people, talk about like what they saw with him at Washington State, the more film I saw of him, the more excited I got. And, again, especially when you thought of what your plan B would have been, right? That was worrisome, right? And so, when he committed, it was like, okay, man, I think this thing has a chance to be legit, right? Now, definitely exceeded my expectations. I definitely did not expect to see the numbers and the number one offense in the country and number one in points. Like, that was incredible to see. The development of the receiving core, the running game was super efficient, everything, right? So what he brought to the table and what that offense was incredible to watch. It definitely exceeded my expectations, and I would imagine that most people's expectations were exceeded. I don't know how many people truly expected to see those kind of numbers.
I 100% agree. My expectations, being a guy from the West Coast, and I love the Pac-12, and I think the Pac-12 messed up massively because if we're looking at the last 2 years, the last year the Pac-12, they had Washington to make the college football final. Yep. They had Oregon in the top 5. Mm-hmm. The year after in football, they had Oregon, the number one team in the nation. We all know what Pac-12 basketball does.
100%.
We all know what Pac-12 softball does. I know not a lot. It's great too. We all know what Pac-12 volleyball is really good. Yep. Pac-12. There's 3 teams in the Pac-12 in the College World Series right now that are our former Pac-12 teams. talking about how bad they messed everything up in the Pac-12, that how good they've been. But watching, because I do like Pac-12 After Dark, watching Cam Ward, I was like, all right, he's good, but I saw what he did at Washington State, where it gets off a really hot start and then kind of falls back and starts playing poorer and poorer. So on the expectations of him exceeding expectations was 100% for me. I didn't expect him to win the Heisman. I picked Miami to win the ACC. I was like, if you really looked at the year before with Miami, they were actually, if you look at the games, they were a very competitive team.
Yep.
They lost like 6 or 7 games by one score.
Mm-hmm.
I would say Cam Ward himself exceeded expectations. I wouldn't say the team in general it was probably exceeding, and then the team, by the end, because it wasn't really Cam Ward's fault that they lost those games.
I think that like the preseason hype, I think, right, you're coming into every season, obviously, for the last 18 to 20 seasons, if we're being brutally honest, with and the expectation at Miami, again, I think for a lot of people who are Miami fans, I think there's definitely a section of the fan base, just like every fan base, if I'm being honest, there's a section of the fan base that is delusional, and we'll call that what it is. I know some of those fans. I see a lot of them on Twitter and on the podcast and their comments and the whole deal, because these are people who are still living in the past and still thinking that Miami should be, it should be 12-0 every season and winning titles, right? I think a lot of it has come from, poor coaching hires, so on and so forth, right? And that's a different topic for a different time. But I don't put myself in that section of the fan base, right? I'm a Miami fan through and through. I'm an optimist, but I'm also a realist, right? And so I say that to say, coming into the season, I was one of those fans that I said, you know what? I can see, like, the more I followed the team, the more I heard about Cam Ward, I was like, I think they've got enough to win 9 games. I think they've got enough to challenge for the ACC. That's where I was, right? But then, of course, you pivot when you see the on-field product and you see what they're doing on offense. You're going, well, I think they can win more than 9 games. And I think that was something that it wasn't a delusion, right? They won 10 games. And if we're being totally honest, with a middle of the road defense, they go to the playoff.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not delusion. That's not, grasping at straws. No, like that is fact.
Yeah.
That is fact. When you're looking at last year and where they fell short, it was on defense. Right. And the defense just never made an impact. The defense never affected games, at least not positively. Right. On offense, the games that, they lost and they were putting up, how many points they were putting up and losing games, right? The Georgia Tech game, kind of the exception, that game right there, again, the offense really didn't do great. And they lost the game. The defense just didn't help. They got Georgia Tech ran the ball, for like 1 million yards. But, again, you have to be able to win, when one of your units isn't performing well, the other unit has to be able to pick them up. And they didn't have that ability last year.
I agree with you that, but it's the offense for me, being an outsider guy who just loves college football, I'm like, the offense was exceeding expectations and picking up the defense every time. Defense is a touchdown. Cam Ward, he's got to go. It felt like, because I was like, hey, this offense is really fun to watch. Cam Ward is really fun to watch. The arm talent is amazing, and the receiving core. But I'm like, if they don't score a touchdown, they basically got to score because the defense isn't doing their job. But Cam Ward himself, I'm like, hey, this guy's knowing Pac-12 football. I'm like, he's very good. He's talented, and knowing where he came from, knowing his story, I'm like, the lack of him, there's going to be no him. I'm 6-0. I'm in a Heisman conversation. I'm going to take my foot off the gas pedal, knowing he went to Incarnate Wood and San San Antonio, I think it is.
It was Incarnate Word it's right outside of Dallas, if I'm not
Dallas.
mistaken.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, somewhere in Texas. No one even. I'm probably not the first person to mess that up. No, I mean, like, he's not going to take his foot off the gas pedal because he's been working his ass off, and that was his only scholarship. So you're going to get a hard worker, but it wasn't. The defense didn't do their job.
Yeah,
and on that Cam Ward, this, like what we're going to talk, this led to what's happening in Miami now with what the quarterback. If Cam Ward doesn't do what he does, they probably don't get Carson Beck. So he's, didn't win the ACC. You really want that after that great start, but that led to maybe helping to put the program back on that national recognition.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think when you're looking at Carson Beck and what he's done recently, even with his 24 season that wasn't up to what I think he had set the standard to be, right? Especially coming off the 23 season where he performed really, really well. I think a lot of people, obviously, for good reason, expected him to just take that next step in 24. And I think when you look back at the 24 season for Georgia, the lack of ownership in terms of the shortcomings, right, for that offense, I think is really interesting to me, especially living in the Atlanta area, listening to some of the talking heads and the pods and the whole deal. It really is interesting to me, to hear the commentary and to hear what people think happened last year and the blame I think overall that Carson Beck has gotten for what that offense was or wasn't last year. It's really interesting to me, and I think there's a little bit of lack of awareness, right, in terms of the fan base. I think there's a little bit of benefit of the doubt given to the coaching staff, specifically to Kirby Smart, and for good reason, right? I mean, if you look at Kirby Smart, I think you can make a pretty sound argument. I don't know how much pushback you get. Pretty sound argument that Kirby Smart is the best coach in college football. I don't think that's a stretch, on any level, right? So with that being the case, kind of like you saw Nick Saban get at Alabama, right? If there was anything, going on that wasn't, excellence, Nick Saban would kind of get a pass, right? And again, for good reason, right? He's the GOAT. I don't know how much pushback there really is on that. If something wasn't going right, people were like, well, it's the OC, it's the DC, it's the position coach, it's the player, whatever the case may be, but it was never Nick Saban. And I think Kirby Smart is kind of now in that stage of his career where if something goes wrong, I think a lot of people just go, oh, well, it's clearly not Kirby Smart, right? And so I think we do have to look at, last year, and I think there's enough blame to go around. You're looking at Mike Bobo as the OC, some shortcomings he had. You're looking at, an offensive line that, was extremely subpar last year. Extremely subpar, right? 104th in like yards per carry. I think they were like 85th or something like that in rushing yards per game. Like you look at the receivers and they were an absolute disaster at receiver last year. A disaster at receiver last year.
Aiden Smith, I want to say.
Arian Smith.
Arian Smith, who's now on the Jets, who's like tearing it up. But he's like having he's having like unbelievable OTA.
I did see that. Yeah,
but
I did see that.
The amount of that was his big problem is the amount of drops he had.
Incredible.
Now they're saying he's starting to fix it a little bit. Yeah. But I'm like,
he can fly. He can fly.
I'm with you. Going off of, I can't put the full brunt of the blame on Carson Beck for last season. 2023, when they won the title, you have two of the best young receivers. Let's get real. Brock Bowers is a receiver. Even though he's
definitely a move tight end, right? He's not a Gronk type of tight end.
He's not. You have two of the best young receivers in the NFL right now. We're right there with Bowers, with McConkey, who left. 100%. So you're going to have that talent to drop off. You lost, they lost their left tackle to the draft the year before with Pittsburgh. So, there's going to be a drop off. I can't put the full brunt of the blame. Carson Beck still had a phenomenal year.
Yep.
He threw for 3,485 yards, 28 touchdowns.
There again, right? When we talk about, okay, where's the blame for this, right? What surprised me so much about the Georgia season is, and I follow recruiting, right? And so because of that, I'm sitting there, every year you look at where Georgia is since Kirby took over, right? There is a top 5 recruiting class every single year, right? They do well in the portal. And so when you're looking at that roster and you're going, where's the talent? Where is the talent? Like, you had guys on the offensive line drafted. I think by my count, there was at least three starters from that O-line drafted, right? I mean, your Arian Smith got drafted again, despite not being able to catch a cold at Georgia, got drafted, right? Because again, the potential's there with the speed and the whole deal. You call it what it is, right? But you're looking at that O-line. The O-line has talent. There's talent on the sideline. There was talent at running back. And Oscar Delp at tight end, right? Who's a very capable guy, right? Not Brock Bowers, but a guy who's really good. There's 4 and 5 star talent. Literally, there you can count the 3 stars on one hand on that roster. It's literally everybody is a 4 or 5 star on that roster. So you're going, how is it possible that they cannot put a receiver on the field that can catch the ball? How is that possible? Right? How is it possible that you are 104th in yards per carry in the country? How is that possible at Georgia with who you have in front of you? You got 3 starters drafted in the draft, right, on the O-line. So you're, again, I think there's a lot of blame to go around, right? And I think you got to start. And the name of the receivers coach escapes me. The O-line coach Stacy Searles, who was at Miami, right? I mean, you have to really take a look at these position coaches and go, okay, what are we doing? What are we doing? Right. And there again, Kirby Smart gets a pass because you've won, back-to-back titles. You're always, you're in the SEC title game every year. Like literally the only team that beats you is Alabama, so on and so forth. So, again, you set a really high bar, and that a bad year for you is 3 losses. Like that's where you want to be as a team. Like when you lose 3 games, the world is falling. Right. Like that's where I'd like to be as a fan, because if you're there as a fan and as a fan base, that means you're following a really, really good team year in and year out. Right. That's where I'd like to be. Right. Where 3 games is unacceptable in terms of losing. But at the same time, you look at what happened, and it's just been really interesting to me where the blame has gone this offseason. And some of the things that I've heard said about Carson Beck. Listen, I don't know the guy personally. I've never met him, probably never going to meet him. But when you look at how good a quarterback he was, and then what you have coming behind him, specifically, this guy Gunnar Stockton, and again, just blasphemous. What I've heard, Carson Beck.
That's the quarterback's always going to get the brunt of the blame.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you're looking at it, you can't blame them. A quarterback's only as good as his offensive line. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm a Jets fan. I'm telling you, if Aaron Rodgers played in 2024 with the Jets with their offensive line, this guy's a first ballot Hall of Famer. One of the best quarterbacks we ever see. He wouldn't look good anyways because he would. So it's only as good as your offensive line.
100%.
And it's not like they had a bad year. They had a good year. And Carson Beck, he threw for over 3,000 yards. It's just they've got so rich with winning,
of course,
that and I get it. I mean, you expect to win every year, but I mean,
listen,
is what you have behind Carson Beck, which maybe it works out, maybe it does. What the hell do I know? But is he better than what Carson Beck is going to be? I don't know. We shall see.
Look, to start off with, his year last year statistically would have been, based on what I saw, and I haven't put all the years together, spreadsheet style to verify that. But I've heard a lot of people say Carson Beck's year last season at Georgia would have essentially been the second best year statistically ever for a quarterback at Miami. When you're looking at 3,400 yards passed, almost 3,500 yards passing, 28 touchdowns, 12 picks. Those numbers would have been good for like the second best season ever, for a quarterback in Miami, just for context. Right. So, all these people, just, kind of dumping on Carson Beck, again, just really interesting to me. And then, like I said, add to that now, I've heard a lot of people talking about, Gunnar Stockton, being better than Carson Beck. Glad Carson Beck is gone. Look, let me tell you something. In 22, they are, so they competed for the job, right? Gunnar Stockton lost, right? Gunnar Stockton was a more highly recruited player coming out of high school than Carson Beck was, but also played 1A football in Georgia, right? And so, again, does he have ability? Yeah, I mean, I guess he's a better runner, than Carson Beck. But for the little I've ever seen Gunnar Stockton play, you cannot convince me that he gives Georgia a better opportunity to win and is an upgrade over Carson Beck. I'm sorry. If your eyes tell you that, then by all means, we're seeing things very differently. Because what I saw of Gunnar Stockton, if I was a Georgia fan, I'm not feeling any type of comfort coming into the season with Gunnar Stockton as a possibility as a starting quarterback at Georgia. When you have the type of aspirations and the bar that you've set at Georgia, Gunnar Stockton does not give me any type of comfort coming into the season that he'll be able to get my team to where we think it should be. And there again, if you're one of those people who feels comfortable with Gunnar Stockton as your starting quarterback, by all means. But this is a guy who's a fourth-year junior at quarterback at Georgia and has done nothing of consequence, nothing of significance. And he was a 5-star kid coming out of high school and going to Georgia, right? This wasn't a junior college kid. This wasn't a nobody like Stetson Bennett, who, came out of nowhere and won 2 titles and the whole deal. This is a very highly recruited guy who has done nothing of consequence at Georgia, nothing, right? And so, there again, to bash Carson Beck the way people have, and to say that Gunnar Stockton, is an upgrade over Carson Beck, to me, when you're looking at the numbers, right? And I was telling you before the show started, if you were a head football coach looking for a starting quarterback, and somebody brought to you these numbers, right? With that, John Doe, with hey, listen, this guy's in the portal. What do you think about going after him? Didn't hear a name, but you heard 24-3 record as a starter, thrown for 7,900 yards, 58 touchdowns, completion percentage of 68%. Is that something you'd be interested in?
I'm taking it.
Right? I would be. Right?
And going off, if we adding the name and just going off that, Carson Beck was the best transfer portal quarterback in the whole class.
To me, I agree with you. Right? I've heard a lot of names, John Mateer and this and that. I'm like,
Mateer. Fernando Menendez or Mendoza. Okay. Yeah. Some of these names I don't even know these guys. Malik Murphy's been around the block. Nico Imaliova. Who if we're talking about a guy, if we're going SEC stats, Carson Beck is 3 in passing yards in the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
Nico had 2,600, and that's not even, that's not talking about his. Carson Beck average game was 268. Nico, who's I guess was the highest rated recruit and the poster boy for NIL,
like 100%,
was through for 201.1 passing yards a game.
Yeah, Tennessee was a team that won with defense and running the ball. Yeah, they didn't win because of Nico. They won with a running game and defense.
And going on Georgia, the offense lines out there. You add Trevor Etienne,
mm-hmm.
and that running game was not good. And we've seen that running game for a long time be dominant at Georgia. And as good as Stetson Bennett was, it wasn't Stetson Bennett winning you titles. It was hard-nosed
defense and running the ball. And he was super mobile. Stetson Bennett
did
super
a
mobile.
Great job managing the game. But, you can't put the full blame on Carson. And I guess it's just a scenario where now you're used to winning, and I'll get it. There are a lot of stupid sports fans in every sporting sport there is. There's not a lot of realists.
Mm-hmm.
We got to be real. I mean, I'm the biggest negative person on every single sports team there is. But I'll be the first person to come out and say, I mean, I'm a diehard Yankees fan, and I hate the Dodgers. And I'm from LA. My dad's from New York. My dad's from Bronxville, New York, so he's from the Bronx. I was the first person to come out and say, and literally I'm like, hey, on paper, Yankees, Dodgers, they're very talented, same thing. But the reason they're better is because they're better fundamentally. You know, they're better this way. The Yankees were super talented. Also, on that point, like, baseball is probably the only sport in the world where your athleticism and talent can't overpower playing clean fundamentals. Whereas, like, in football, you know, like in football, like, hey, I made some mistakes here and there, but I'm so freaking athletic that I'll get the job done. Baseball, it's like, you're not clean, it's not going to get it done. But I'm like, I hear a lot of, I'll say there are a lot of stupid Jets fans, there are a lot of stupid Yankees. Oh, that's this. I'm like that. I'm like, you got to be a realist sometimes. You know, Georgia. I mean, I get it. They've won a lot. You got to be a realist. I'm like, yeah, Carson Beck maybe didn't have some of his best games, but our offensive line didn't do their job. Our running game wasn't as good. Our defense, which has been our staple since Kirby's come there, didn't do the job. But going off of you being the Miami resident fan on here, going in, what are your expectations for Carson Beck and going into the season? Because, I mean, you guys did lose I don't know what you got on defense. Did lose a handful of players on the offensive side of the ball. But, I mean, you get Carson Beck, which I think that was the crown jewel of the transfer portal, in my opinion.
Yeah. Listen, the one of the things to take comfort in, if you're a Miami fan, you have to look at your offensive coordinator. And you know, offensive coordinator Shannon Dawson, and a guy who did really well with a guy like Tyler Van Dyke. I think mentally Tyler Van Dyke was just, you know, not fit to be a starting quarterback at Miami. You know, you look at the numbers, I know what the record says, but when you look at the numbers and what that offense did, they were a good offense. They were an offense that moved the ball. They would get in the red zone and just stall, right? A guy in Tyler Van Dyke who just, you know, horrible decision making. Guy who was allergic to checking down the ball. A guy who, you know, would just, I feel like at times would just close his eyes and throw into double or triple coverage when he had a running back out there in the flat, you know, all alone. I don't understand what he was looking at. You know, I guess if you're being honest, I don't know if you want to blame that on the OC, if you want to blame that on, you know, coaching, whatever the case may be, you know, but a guy who just proved in short time that he wasn't fit to be the starting quarterback of Miami. I think the numbers were better than the record showed. But at the end of the day, you know, again, that's really all you have to go on, right? But again, obviously, as somebody who watched every game, I can tell you that Tyler Van Dyke was 100% the problem there, right? You fast forward now, you know, to 24, you bring in a guy like Cam Ward, a guy who was projected to be, you know, a day three, you know, pick at best. And what Shannon Dawson did with him, incorporating him into that offense, you know, and letting him loose, right? You know, obviously broke all kind of records there, right? I mean, you don't have to go over everything he did. You know, obviously everybody was able to see it. But I think I'm excited to see what Shannon Dawson does with a guy like Carson Beck. Again, going back to it, you know, Carson Beck is a really talented dude, right? There's a reason why you saw so many mock drafts before, you know, this the 24 season that had Carson Beck. If he wasn't the number one pick, he was the first quarterback off the board, right? I mean, he was at worst a top 5 pick by just about everybody, right? Regress a little bit, obviously got hurt, and so, you know, that changed things around. You know, blessing in disguise to have Emory Williams have played the bowl game and looked the way he did, and I think that kind of, you know, instilled that sense of urgency. Is like, hey, we need to go out there and get a quarterback, because if Emory Williams shows really well in that game, then who knows what we're talking about in terms of starting quarterback for Miami this year, right? So I think I've told a lot of fans that I think that was the biggest blessing, that could have happened for Miami and to the fan base is that Emory Williams stunk up the joint in that Pop-Tarts Bowl. Because if he goes out and has a great game, then I don't think they go into the offseason with the same urgency. Now, I could be wrong. I could be totally wrong. Maybe that was a plan from the very beginning. But I think there's a different sense of urgency. I feel like if he goes out and just plays his ass off, now you're like, you know what? I think we got something here. And now they go into the season with him as a starter, and who knows what happens at that point. But you got to be excited about the ability Carson Beck brings. Again, this is a guy who, a lot of people don't realize the type of athlete this guy is, right? I mean, he was committed to the University of Florida as a baseball player, as a third baseman coming out of high school. Right? I mean, this guy's he's an athlete, right? And so I think he's a better athlete than I think people give him credit for. You see him break the pocket, right? And again, going back to the comparison, right? Gunnar Stockton and Carson Beck. I think Gunnar Stockton is a better runner, clearly, right? Gunnar Stockton is a guy who when he gets out of the pocket, I mean, he's really, really talented in the open field and everything. But in terms of the type of athlete Carson Beck is, a guy who's bigger, 6'4", 220, guy who's got a great arm, might not have a Cam Ward arm, but a guy who doesn't lack for arm strength, a guy who throws with velocity, who throws with touch, who's able to layer the ball, a guy who throws for a high completion percentage. 68% over the course of his career is really good. And so, a guy who isn't like, it's not 68% checking down. The guy's 68%, challenging downfield, right? A guy who has the arm strength to throw that deep ball and challenge DBs and everything like that. So you got to be excited for the quarterback position if you're a Miami fan, right? Because again, this is a guy who is a legitimate guy at the position. This is a guy who's lost 3 games in college. One of them wasn't to Alabama, right? 3 losses, 2 of them were to Alabama, 1 was to Ole Miss, right? In the SEC, and last year he played 8 of the top 30 defenses in the country, right? That's not going to be the case at Miami, right? So there's a lot to be excited about when you look at the position. Now, here's the issue. Is in terms of what he's surrounded by. You lost a lot on offense, right? You definitely lost a lot of production. And going back to the defense, what another reason why you have to be so disappointed in defense is that the offense was really good, but the offense never played with a huge lead because of what the defense was lacking. And so because of that, you really weren't able to play any young guys to see what it is you had in the underclassmen, especially at receiver, right? And so you got to be a little bit concerned, I would say, in that the receiving corps as a whole, you're looking at a lot of talent, but you're also looking at a lot of inexperience, right? The way I break down every position is talent, depth, experience. That's the way every position group, that's the way I look at it, right? In that receiver, there's a lot of talent, there's a lot of depth, but there's not a lot of returning experience. So, yeah, you have some highly recruited guys, right? I mean, JoJo Trader is a guy who, if you follow the offseason, hype and everything, I think he's a guy who is probably going to be the number one. CJ Daniels is a 6-year guy you brought in from LSU. At receiver, probably going to be your outside guy. He's like 6'4". You got some guys, again, coming up, again, freshmen, sophomores, highly recruited guys with a lot of ability, but guys who haven't, done a lot at Miami because they just haven't gone on the field, right? But when you look at the O-line, who should, which that position group, if it's not the best group in the country, should be a top 5 group in the country, if everybody stays healthy and they live up to expectations, and a running back room that is also probably a top 5 running back room in the country. So when you're looking at what you have, in front of him and protection, the teams that made the college football playoff last year, the way they won was with a good running game and good defense, right? And I think at the very least on the offensive side of the ball, I think you can count on having a veteran line that is going to be able to run the ball, and that is a quarterback's best friend all day, every day.
Yeah, I mean, on my expectations, I think like you said, they did lose a lot offensively. Obviously, you lose Xavier Restrepo, who's a guy who holds, every receiving record there is for Miami, which if you look at the names of University of Miami receivers, you wouldn't think it would be Xavier Restrepo breaking – would he break – was it Michael Irvin's record?
Michael Irvin's record, yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't think it's Xavier Restrepo when you see these Hall of Famers. I mean, you lose him, you lose Elijah Arroyo to the draft. So I think if what you're saying, his line is good. I mean, I know that I don't know I can't remember your other running back. You lose Damian Martinez.
Yeah, who was a stud, and I can't not believe he got drafted where he got drafted. But this year you'll have Mark Fletcher as your starter, Jordan Lyle as your number 2.
And like we spoke, what we saw when he was successful, obviously, he at Georgia, he had McConkey who could bail any quarterback out, like we've seen, and he had Brock Bowers, but they had a strong running game to build off that to build to that passing game. So I mean, he's not going to be the Cam Ward. He's not going to be making those miraculous throws where it's like, holy crap, you just made this throw, in the back of the end zone that probably,
exactly
was insane. But I mean, the ACC, it's not like the ACC is like the Big Ten or the SEC. It's not that strong. And the defense is not the SEC for sure. So, I mean, is 9 to 10 wins out of the question for Miami? No. Now they're going to get thrown in the fire right off the bat playing Notre Dame because Marcus Freeman's defense is going to, even though they lost some players, he's going to have that defense up and ready for game 1. Yep. Even I not being a Miami guy and obviously not being a Hurricanes fan, the biggest mistake Miami makes, that football program, is taking that football, the Orange Bowl, and moving it to Hard Rock Stadium.
You're gonna make me cry right here on.
Yeah, but it's the same thing. I'm from
that hurt my soul. That hurt my soul.
But it's like, I mean, I don't know what Coral Gables and downtown Miami, 30, 40 minutes, and that's not talking about traffic.
Yeah, so they play in Miami Gardens, and they were in Little Havana, so not quite downtown, but not quite Coral Gables, but. Yeah, when you're looking at point A to point B, when you're looking at like Little Havana up to Miami Gardens, or Coral Gables if they did have an on-field or an on-campus stadium or whatever.
You're looking at it and you watch Miami games when you look at Hard Rock and the stadium's, the first barely even full, not even full.
Yeah.
Because I mean the students got to travel so far just to get there.
So I will say. What Miami does really well is the event, right? What Miami has never done well, right, is your pit, all right? Like those kind of games. Listen, from the time I was a kid living in Miami, right, at the Orange Bowl in their heyday, like you could get a ticket. Yeah, obviously tickets work differently then, right? The box office and the whole deal. But you could get a ticket to the game the day of the game. You walk up to the window and like you get a ticket and walk into the game. So I feel like the Miami doesn't have an atmosphere, at home or whatever narrative. I think kind of gets played out sometimes. I think if you look at what your big games there have been, like your Notre Dame's, 2017 and Florida State when they come to town and like the big games people show out for, and the big games there is a crowd and there's an atmosphere and the whole deal. It's a little bit different, in places like Miami. And I always bring USC to the table as a point of comparison, right? And especially, you being a Pac-12 guy and everything. I mean, you'll know, like, very similar in that, again, USC, right? They play in a stadium that's it's not theirs, right? They play in a stadium that isn't sold out, game in and game out, even right when they were great, right? Matt Leinart days, right, and the whole deal.
You can't sell out the full stadium.
But yeah, right. I mean, so it's like it's similar in that, like very cities that are, there's a lot to do more than just like college football, right? There's always something going on in terms of nightlife and the beach and your extracurricular activities, right? different markets and different towns than your Georgias and your Tennessees and that kind of thing. So I think that narrative, honestly, man, has gotten to the point where it's like you hear it, and again, to me, because I know it so well, it's like, yeah, but I think you get some good crowds at Hard Rock. I think it's become a stadium that when it is full, it is an advantage. Again, it gets packed. I think with the renovations that they've made, I think it's a stadium that the decibel level does get high, and I think especially at night, like if you're a guy who hasn't really been in those kind of atmospheres, I think it can be an atmosphere that is intimidating. I know that we use the word intimidating, but again, when the lights are bright and the crowd is loud there, I think they do use it to their advantage, right? And I think when you have a guy like Carson Beck who's played in the toughest environments in the country, in the SEC, when you talk about going to Tuscaloosa, he's been to Ole Miss, right? Knoxville, right? Some of these games and atmospheres he's played in, I think, again, it's just one more thing to like about a guy like Carson Beck, given, his record, given his record versus who he's accumulated that record against, the places where he's played at, winning SEC titles, and the whole deal. There's nothing to not like about the move if you're a Miami fan.
Yeah. I mean, I think it'll be, like we said, the defense isn't as good. I mean, I still, even though, SMU, who knows if it was a fluke last year,
I think you have to like what,
Clemson was good at the end of the year at the right time. Yeah. I mean, like, those are, I still, I don't see a clear cut, like,
there's no great team in the ACC.
3 great teams that are like, I see the Big Ten. I'm like, Ohio State, even though we don't know what Ohio State will be like this year.
Exactly.
They've lost a lot, but a lot because they lost their whole running game, which was Ohio State's team.
They lost their OC. They lost their starting quarterback. They lost their running backs. They lost D linemen. They lost receivers. But
it's like, I don't think there's like the intimidating team in the ACC where, like no one in their right mind before the 2024 season would have said SMU is going to win the ACC regular season title. Exactly. If you did, congratulations.
You won a lot of money. You won a lot of money.
I hope you know more football than me. If that's what
I would have never guessed that.
If that's what you said, coming from was it AAC, you know a lot about football then. But no one would have said SMU is going to come in and run the table. But I don't see. I see Clemson, I see SMU, Georgia Tech's a tough, scrappy football team. But I'm like, there's no one like, oh crap.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at the ACC, I think you're again based on what we know or what we assume we know given last year. I think you have to look at your top 2 teams being Miami and Clemson. Clemson and Miami, depending on how you want to,
don't play each other again in the regular season.
Exactly, right. And so I think when you're looking at the schedule, I've seen varying opinions on the schedule. I'm looking at it in terms of, I think your toughest games are going to be your non-conference games, right? I think the Notre Dame game to start the season and the Florida game, I think Florida is going to be I think Florida has a chance of being a really good team. I think they're a very talented team, and I think they're a team that could be better than their record indicates. They got another really tough schedule this year. I think they're looking for a little bit of payback, come game, I think it's 4, where they'll be at Miami, given what Miami went and did to them in the swamp last year. But I think as a Miami fan and you're looking at the schedule, those are going to be your 2 toughest games. I think Florida State is better than they were last year. I just based on just you have to win more than 2 games, and I think they're.
And they also got was it Thomas Castellanos from Boston College? Anything's better than DJ.
DJ, listen, all I heard, Florida State fans talking a house of shit before the season started. Oh, DJU's better than Cam Ward. He's okay. Yeah, cool story. How did that turn out? You know what I mean? And with the kid at Florida, Mertz. Oh, Mertz is better than Cam Ward. All right, cool story. But listen, do I think they're going to be better?
Maybe DJ. Hell no, Graham Mertz. Anybody watch Wisconsin? I mean,
well, Mertz was better than DJU.
I'm a football nut. You watch Graham Mertz at Wisconsin?
Yeah,
I mean, no,
falling short of expectation. Graham Mertz was a 5-star kid. Graham Mertz was a 5-star kid coming out of high school, and definitely didn't live up to it. Now he wasn't. I will say he wasn't terrible at Florida. I don't think he was awful. Was he great? And he wasn't great. I don't think he was terrible. But there again, right? I mean, he definitely did not live up to what he was coming out of high school, right? And so again, when you're looking at this schedule for Miami, your 2 toughest games are out of conference. Your toughest games in conference, are really up, right? Going to SMU in November, I think, could be challenging. Virginia Tech is always tough if you're Miami. For some reason, playing at Lane Stadium,
it's in Blacksburg.
It's Blacksburg, right? It's always right. Enter Sandman and everybody going nuts and the whole deal. It's always an intimidating place to play, right? You're looking at having to go to Florida State. We'll see what they are this year. I expect Miami to win that game, but it's at Florida State, so again, you're on the road. Anything can happen. With some young, hopefully around that time they'll have gotten lathered up and ready to go. But again, I think having a veteran O-line, having a veteran quarterback is going to help you in that instance. And I think hopefully a resurgent defense, right? Given what you have now at DC, what you brought into the transfer portal. And again, there is talent there. Some of it is unproven talent, and obviously it's a new system and the whole deal, but it was needed. But again, you're looking at the ACC again overall, right? I mean, it's there, right? It's there for the taking. Like Miami should not be anywhere other than Charlotte on December 6th for the ACC title game. Yeah. Like if that does not happen, then in my opinion, that is a wasted season. Plain and simple. I think the expectation has to be ACC title and the playoff, this year, given Carson Beck, given the talent, given the retool on defense, the expectation cannot be anything other than minimum 10 wins, minimum trip to Charlotte, and being in the playoff. That has to be where you're aiming this year as a staff, as a roster. That's what it has to be.
I mean, I'm looking by if you're going after if they're 3-1 after the first 4 weeks, which they could easily. We don't know what Notre Dame's going to be. Notre Dame could, but going off of what Marcus Freeman, I think they can beat Miami week 1. But we don't know with their new quarterback situation. If you're going 3-1 going into ACC play, that means Carson Beck's rolling. He's going to have 2 nice games versus USF, who's been better of late, who's been a better team of late, and Bethune Cookman. But those will be 2 nice games for Carson Beck to get into that offense, to get rolling. If you can go 3 and beat, if they're 4-0, hell. But if you lose one of those games, I mean, going to ACC play, that means you're rolling nice. I mean, if you're 4-0, you beat Notre Dame, who just was, made the college football playoff. I mean,
no, hype will be through the roof.
I could still see him. The ACC, I think Clemson's the cream of the crop, but Clemson, as we've seen for the ACC, not really saying cream of the crop like, oh crap, but like for the ACC, it's there. But like Clemson is beatable, very beatable.
Yeah, listen. You start the season off right against a Notre Dame team that lost a lot, right? Start on offense with their starting quarterback, right? And granted, wasn't necessarily the reason why they made the college football playoff and made it to the title game, because Riley Leonard was very ordinary, right? A guy who really couldn't throw the ball, which I was a little bit surprised. I thought he'd be a little bit better than he was, but a team that got there right defense and running the ball. They got there with elite defense. They ran the ball, one of the best running backs in the country, and Jeremiah Love. You're looking at what it is they bring back, right? And even though Riley Leonard wasn't great necessarily, but you're breaking in a new starting quarterback. And you're breaking in a new starting quarterback, game 1 of the season, right? Steve Angeli was rumored to possibly be the starter, right? He was at least there was going to be an open quarterback competition from what I read. And then he transfers out because I guess he started hearing the rumblings of C.J. Carr probably being given the starting job. C.J. Carr, a very, very talented dude, a 5-star kid in the whole deal. But what has C.J. Carr done so far, right? C.J. Carr, there's projection. There's not production. It's projection. He's a talented kid, but now a kid who game one is on the road at what I am telling you, and I'm going to be there, but I'm telling you, game one at Hard Rock is at a night game. And when I tell you, listen, for
Prime time
whatever,
game too.
100%. So whatever people don't think Miami is as a home field, I am telling you, watch that game August 30th, I think it is. It's a Sunday. Watch that game, and that will be the exception to whatever you think of Miami as a home crowd. It's a night game. It's Notre Dame. That game is going to be insane in terms of atmosphere. So if you're telling me that CJ Carr, not having played any significant snaps as a starting quarterback in Notre Dame, is going to go in game one on the road at Miami Sunday night and show out, listen, you're going to have to show me that first and foremost. Then you're looking at defense. Was the defense elite last year? The defense was elite. But you lose Al Golden at DC. You get guys drafted, right? You lose Xavier Watts at safety. You lose a really good corner, right? You lose some D linemen, the whole deal, linebackers. So there again, yeah, they were elite last year. Does that translate? Right? Who takes over for Al Golden? Who replaces all the talent you lost? So, there again, does Miami have questions? Miami has questions. Does Notre Dame have questions? Absolutely, they have questions. Now, game 6 or 7, who knows? We'll see about Notre Dame and what they've replaced all those people with, because obviously they're a super talented roster. And they've been, Marcus Freeman has been recruiting his ass off since he got to Notre Dame. But I don't know that it's a foregone conclusion that CJ Carr starts game one at Miami and throws for 350 yards and they win the game. I wouldn't say that.
It's going to be, that'll be primetime game 7, Sunday. So there'll be no football on besides that game. So
all eyes on you.
That's all. Yeah.
So when you're looking at that situation, right? If I'm, you're looking at game one, and again, CJ Carr may go on to be an All-American, first round pick, the whole deal. Who knows? He's got the skill set for it and the talent. But if you're looking at game one and you're comparing quarterbacks, I will take Carson Beck in that situation 10 out of 10 times. 10 out of 10 times I will take Carson Beck in that particular situation.
If you got to play in the SEC, you got to go to Neyland Stadium, which if you're standing on the field at Neyland Stadium and you look up, it's insane.
That's what I've heard, man. I've never been. It's on the list. I need to make it a notch to watch a game.
Oxford is insane. They get up. So, he's not going to be rattled at all.
At all.
The guy's composed. And knowing he played for Kirby Smart, you got to have your head on your shoulders, right?
100%. Kirby Smart rips into people on the sideline. Lets him have it, loses his mind.
You wouldn't be the starter at Georgia if you can handle your shit.
100%.
Will he be able to handle that situation? 100%.
Yeah. 100%.
But I definitely see a 9 to 10 win season. Looking at the schedule, like you said, Virginia Tech's gonna be tough, just because of playing in Lake Stadium, and that place that's on my list. I got to get there. That place gets rocking. Will he get rattled? No, but it's gonna, like you said, it's gonna come down to who's replacing those great wide receivers that Miami had. The great tight end Elijah Arroyo. Who are they replacing him with? The offense it's really going to come down. Is the defense going to be able to keep up with the offense, which was the downside last year? Because as much as everybody loves offense, defense wins games.
Yeah, no, 100%. And listen, what I told you about the way I break down every position group, talent, depth, experience. When you're looking at what you lost at receiver, you're replacing that. I feel very comfortable in this particular assessment. Other than Elijah Arroyo, who Elijah Lofton is a kid who is extremely highly thought of in the building. A guy who a lot of people think could be their best player, period, on offense, is Elijah Lofton. And I think we're going to get to know him this year, replacing Elijah Arroyo. When you're talking about Elijah Lofton replacing Elijah Arroyo is probably a more talented guy. He's a guy who, big, fast, talented dude at tight end, right? Huge loss at tight end. But when you're looking at who you're replacing at receiver, I am comfortable saying that you are replacing every person you lost, Xavier Restrepo, Jacoby George, Sam Brown, you're replacing all of them with more talented players. Okay, now, doesn't mean that they're going to necessarily be better players, that they're going to be more productive, because you're replacing production with, potential. You're replacing production, right, with promise, right? So I get what those guys were, but I think Shannon Dawson, what he has in his back pocket, right? What he's proven is that this is an offense that you can develop, players in. And I think when you're looking at your Jacoby Georges and your Xavier Restrepos and your Sam Browns and these guys that left, you have to like what you have in terms of these are more talented guys that are going to come in. All these guys are more talented than who they're replacing, right? The problem is those guys were all, draft eligible guys, but you're not, there's no drop off in talent. So I think you have a system in place, right, where it is a quarterback friendly system. It's a system that is receiver friendly, right? And I think these are guys that are capable of coming in. You have a lot of receivers to choose from. So I think you have a lot of guys that can come in and in this system can come in and make a mark really early on. That's what Shannon Dawson has established as an offensive coordinator. So I wouldn't say I'm concerned, right? I'm really curious to see who, kind of steps to the front of the line. I have no doubt that JoJo Trader is going to be one of those guys. I think CJ Daniels, given his experience, right? A guy who's going to be I think a fifth-year guy, if I'm not mistaken, coming from LSU. I think those guys are probably going to be, your starters.
BYU.
Exactly. Keelan Marion, right? A guy who is expected to be their kick returner, and a guy who is going to contribute on offense. Also a guy who's probably going to be, probably a number 3 receiver playing in the slot. I think you got Ray Joseph. You've got I think again, man, there's a lot of talent at that position. I think it's a deep position. I just think it's an unproven position overall. Yeah, there's youth and the guys from the transfer portal who really haven't proven it at Miami necessarily. But I think there's talent. And again, I think when you have an O-line like they do, you're going to have a running game like you expect for them to have, and a veteran guy at quarterback. I think that sets up well for not being super proven at receiver. I think it buys you a little bit of time to get those guys incorporated into the offense, and get them, kind of on the same page with the quarterback, so that moving forward, now you have an offense who's able to throw the ball, along with, being able to run the ball. So again, the production isn't there, but I think the talent is there. I think the depth is there. And I think as the season goes along, I think you're going to see what a group of receivers they have, what a talented group of receivers that Miami has.
I mean, is it out of the? I still see him at least 3,600 passing yards, 25 touchdowns. He's got to get the interceptions down. He had 12 last year at Georgia.
Yeah, and he had,
you're bad interceptions too.
Yeah, you're looking at him. Some of the stuff, and it came in bunches, because I was looking at his numbers earlier today, and when you're looking at the picks, they came in bunches. It was like one game he had 3, another game he had 3. I think he had like 3 against Texas, 3 against Florida. Like one of those games, it was only one game where he had like multiple picks and they ended up actually losing the game. That was against Ole Miss. Or I'm lying. It was the Alabama game. The Ole Miss game, he threw multiple picks, but they ended up winning. But the Alabama game, where he threw multiple picks, they lost to Ole Miss, but he didn't throw multiple picks. He didn't play well, but he didn't throw multiple picks. But again, I think when you're looking at, man, I saw a cut up not too long ago, and I can't remember who it was. I don't know if it was on YouTube or on Twitter or something like that. And a guy that put together, essentially it was like a blooper reel of the Georgia receivers and the drops. And listen, man, when I tell you, like, if you get those drops back, right? If you get the drops back, then you get the yardage back, right? And if you get some of those drops back, you get some of the picks back, right? So was he perfect last year? He was not. But I think the receivers had a lot to do with it also. you're looking at his numbers, right? Instead of 3,400 yards, almost 3,500 yards, he's over 4,000 yards if you get back the drop yardage, right? If you get back, those drops, his completion percentage, which was 64.7% last year, down from 72.4 the year before. I mean, you're probably closer to what his average was. You're in that, probably somewhere 67, 68% range, right?
Yeah.
If you get back those drops, you're closer to, you're probably over 30 touchdown passes, right? And so, again, does he have to play better? He does, right? But when you're looking at what the receivers didn't do for him last year, I just don't think that you're going to have that problem at Miami, right? And I think you have to look at it, if you're comparing apples to apples, right? You're comparing 2025 receiving core at Miami to 2024 receiving core at Georgia. I don't think there's a comparison. I think Miami head and shoulders at receiver above what Georgia had in 2024. I don't think there's any conversation that can be had where that's not the case.
Yeah.
At all. Right. And so, again, you're going to have a running game. That's going to give, those receivers time to get open. And I think Carson Beck with time, Carson Beck is a great quarterback. And Carson Beck is with time is a top quarterback in the country, type of quarterback when things around him are good. Right. So again, we'll see what happens. You can project whatever you want. Ultimately, it has to be proven on the field. But I am not the one thing that worried me, right, was him not having the spring, the true spring, right, with his guys to kind of get on the same page. But after the spring, he was cleared in full to throw. And the from everything I've read and seen and heard, the player-led practices and stuff have been going well. He's looked good in the whole deal. Obviously, you're not going to see any video of that, and because it's done, at the indoor practice facility and nobody's filming or anything. But again, that was the other thing that a lot of people are like, oh, with this massive injury, it was an injury to his throwing elbow, but this wasn't a UCL injury. This wasn't Tommy John, right? This was a brace, a repair, the same thing that Brock Purdy had, exactly the same injury that Brock Purdy had. And you saw Brock Purdy come back last year, and he had a good year, right? The Niners as a team didn't have a good year, a ton of injuries in the whole deal, but Brock Purdy's arm wasn't affected by that injury, right? And so, again, I don't anticipate the injury, having any lingering effects. Carson Beck hasn't been a guy who's been, who's dealt with injuries, hamstrings, right, soft tissue injuries, that kind of thing. This is a freak thing, right? The O-line not doing their job and him getting hit as he threw the ball and the injury happened. But, again, Carson Beck has –
don't they say both those are more baseball injuries than football, the Purdy one and –
yeah. Well, also, yeah, because he got hit as his arm was coming this way, right? His arm's going this way, and it, he got hit and it went, went the other way. So that's kind of where the injury happened, right? As he threw the ball.
Going off, I want to, not being from Florida, I know about Florida high school football, and you obviously are from Florida. And we spoke about, I think you said Graham Mertz is from Duval. Was that Mertz?
No. So Carson Beck. Carson Beck,
yeah, is from Duval. What is going on in the water up there with Duval producing these football players?
Dude, it's always been that way, man. That area has always been, an area that produces a lot of talent. They're an area that's been kind of a pipeline for Florida. They kind of have the pick of the litter up there. Those guys all go to Florida and Florida State. Just based on proximity. They just produce a ton of talent, like so many areas in Florida. When you're looking at, the Duval area in North Florida, you get into Central Florida and you have, powers in Central Florida, and then you get into South Florida. When you're looking at just in Dade County alone, never mind Broward and Palm Beach, but, you get into South Florida alone, in Northwestern, Central, Booker T, Jackson, Edison, Homestead, Southridge, back in the day, along with some of your private schools who now become really big. You got IMG down there in South Florida. So all over the state of Florida is just, it's a recruiting hotbed,
IMG's not even a high school, dude.
Yeah, they're a boarding school, and
It's
obviously, you get guys from all over the country, but yeah, I mean, those aren't Florida kids, right? I mean, they're national kids, but
it's insane.
But yeah, it's unfair.
Have you ever been to that campus?
I've not.
Oh my, because I mean, it's right down the street from where I live.
Yeah. How far is that from you?
6 minutes.
Oh, damn! Is it really? It's that close?
Yeah.
Damn, I did not realize that.
I
know it's Bradenton. I do know it's Bradenton, but I forget how close that is to like Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater, all that.
Oh, but from Tampa, from St. Pete, I'm probably like 38 minutes. Tampa is probably, depending on traffic, like an hour. And right now is not as bad because all the people we love to hate from all the snowbirds have finally left. Which thank you. You can leave.
Yeah. They went back north because it's too hot for them.
It's hot up north too. I get it. I get it. It's hot here. Yeah. I'm from California, Southern California, man. I'm from like the few places where it's like, hey, I'll get like 85 in the summer. I'll get to like 65, 60. And it gets a few places and people are like, California's beautiful. It is. But I'm like, I've lived in San Fernando Valley, which is LA. In the summer, it gets 100. I'm like, now it's dry heat. Down here is a lot humider. But I mean, like, you go up north, go to Boston, go to New York. It's hot as hell up there too. I lived in Nashville.
It does get warm up there from everything I've seen. Like I've been in New York and it has been warm. So.
I mean, I lived in Nashville before. The summer in Nashville was miserable. It was.
Oh yeah. Nashville. Yeah, I've been to Nashville several times. Nashville's been hot as hell.
So and there's no beach, but I mean, IMG's right there. They've got 6 baseball fields, a massive football stadium, just. I know because my brother-in-law is from Bradenton, and he's like, there's right where the campus is, everybody will come in and try to build businesses there. They'll like, we'll put this restaurant in. It always fails because IMG's got a professional, restaurant in their campus, so the kids never leave.
Yeah.
So they're like, this is great. The IMG kids will come. Because they're all rich.
Of course, yeah. It's a boarding school, so the parents have to be able to afford to send them there. Or I would have some kind of scholarship deal with them, right?
But I talked to one of the football coaches, and he goes, people fly in for 1 week of coaching, just for 1 week, and pay for the coaching, and then spend $1,500 a night to stay at IMG.
Wow. So they even got They got lodging that they hit you for on campus, huh?
They got their own hotel.
Damn.
They got their own hotel.
That's crazy, man.
It's nuts. Insane. But if you're looking at it, it's like 75, almost $100,000 a year.
Wow. Yeah. But yeah, that's what I was saying, right? So I feel like on some level, right? Do they do scholarships?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have to, right? They have to, I would imagine.
I mean, I'm guessing most of their money comes from they make a lot of money. People come there because of the tennis academy's big because it was a
that's where it started, right? So that's where
Nick Bollettieri.
Nick Bollettieri, exactly. That's where that started right there, right? Was with tennis, and then it kind of grew from there, right?
So my sister's father-in-law, so my brother-in-law's dad, who's from Argentina, moved to Bradenton to work for Nick Bollettieri before it was IMG. But I mean, you have now it's like Bollettieri Boulevard, but that's where I'm sure they make a lot of their money on the people who come and do those private sessions because everybody knowing they sell out baseball tournaments come in the summer and play there, showcases come there.
For sure.
So
I've heard that
a ton of money off of the outside stuff, not just like the football program, which is insane.
Yeah,
their top tier football program's nuts.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, they're again every year, man, they're loaded. It's shocking when they lose a game, right? And the games that they do lose are. But they play a national schedule, so the games that they lose are like few and far between, and they always lose to like superpowers, right? I mean, because I remember they lost to not too long ago. I think it was last year, the year before, I think they lost to, I think it was like Northwestern in Miami. It was Northwestern or Central or one of those teams that went to a couple years ago, I guess it was, because I remember that was when Ruben Bain went nuts, in that game. And Francis Mauigoa, who's a starting right tackle at Miami, he was at IMG then, and they battled in the whole deal, and Central beat them in that game. I think it was to start the season. But when they lose, I mean, they play a national schedule, right? So when they lose, I mean, they lose to like, a ranked high school program in the country, right?
Aquinas or
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's who they lose to, because that's who they play, right? It's St. Thomas.
They don't when like now I'm looking here because we have Manatee High School, which I just moving to Bradenton, because I was in Sarasota. They ended up making Manatee High School made it to like the semifinals, and St. Thomas Aquinas came to Bradenton and played. I don't know how it works. Do they go in like 7A, whatever the top division when it comes playoff time for high school football?
Yeah.
Or it's just like, hey, we play national schedule, we don't bother with that.
That's a good question with IMG. I'm not 100% sure, because I would imagine they have to play. I'm not sure how that works, to be totally honest with you. Like, because obviously your traditional high schools obviously are tied to a region, and the whole deal. So they play regional, and obviously state in their qualification. 6A. I think Florida goes up to, I think it's 7A if I'm not mistaken. But I'm not sure 100% how it goes with IMG, given the type of school that it is, and given the type of schedule that they play. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know that they abide by like the same like high, the playoffs and the region, the whole deal. I don't think they do, but don't hold me to it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to now figure it out, because like in California, it's literally we're like Southern section, Central Valley, Northern California.
Yeah, because there's so many schools, I'd imagine.
Yeah,
right?
But it's just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah.
Here it's like 1A, 2A. I'm like, I'm like, all right, one's the top, one's St. John Bosco, modern day.
Yeah, you see in Florida, and I think in most states it's the other way around. Where if you play like for example, like in Georgia, like your 1A is your lowest classification. Those are your smaller schools and the whole deal. Where I think it goes all the way up to, I think 6A, 7A, something like that. And those are your bigger schools. Those are your bigger enrollment and kind of all that stuff. The same way in Florida. It's the bigger the number, the bigger the enrollment and bigger the school and all that.
I mean, modern day and St. John Bosco are probably two of the best high schools
in the country. Yeah, there's no probably. There's no probably. I mean, those guys now.
And knowing the players like modern days put out, it's like,
yeah, dude. Yeah.
Insane. But I mean, like they try to make it where like modern day will go play De La Salle Catholic school.
I mean, you're looking at what those guys every year, right? Even this year, right? That kid Mark Bowman who committed to USC, the tight end. The NIL numbers I've seen from him are they're talking like $8-10 million NIL deal for a tight end, which is insane. They got Chris Henry Jr., who's a 5-star kid going to Ohio State. They got a D lineman that I don't mind was chasing, who's committed to USC. It's a pipeline school for USC. And
my buddies went to St. John Bosco, and now he's an alumni. He's like, I want to go to this game, but I can't get tickets because I didn't book them early enough.
Dude, isn't that crazy for a high school game? And like, oh God, I can't go because I didn't book them. That's insane.
He showed me the mod. He's like, somebody gave me a ticket, Modern Day Bosco, which like every other year they switch. It'll be like Modern Day wins the Trinity League is what it is. I actually coached baseball in the Trinity League, and they're not. Okay. But it would be like Modern Day wins the Trinity League, St. John Bosco wins CIF. Flip it. Next year it's like, oh, they win it all. Modern Day win. It's just literally like this every other year. Yeah. It's like just powerhouses.
Yeah. No, the players that come from
speaking of that, DJ went to St. John Bosco, and he was throwing 92 off the bump in baseball.
DJ
Uyalungalan.
Oh, okay. I got you. Yeah, I know he was from out west. I just didn't know from where.
Oh, I've heard stories about high school. That's why I went to this
Come on.
His dad let it slip to one of when they were playing baseball to one of our coaches that
nobody should be surprised by that.
He's like, why did you guys choose St. John Bosco? And he's like,
yeah.
I'm like, and this is before NIL, way before NIL.
Come on, man. Dude, those stories, look, we can do a whole nother pod about, bagmen in college and, the stories, alleged stories in high school. And,
I mean, you're from Miami, so that goes into even watching like these 30 for 30s on like Miami Pop Warner, where you're like, hey kid, you got to do this. I'm betting on this Pop Warner game.
Yeah, insane. Yeah, that's what, dude. That's why I tell you, like, and I've talked to obviously a lot of people about it, but it's like, dude, football has a following in this country, dude, like no other. Like it's you can call baseball the national pastime, dude. That stopped being the case like 25 years ago, if not longer.
I mean, again, I think, and I've kind of always said it. Baseball, the reason football and basketball are a little more popular, and basketball's dropping like heck, right?
100%.
Like the rating, baseball's ratings are actually going up. Basketball's like, and I get it because basketball, like I've literally going on a little bit. Like I think when Greg Popovich retired, they showed this classic Spurs, Mono, Parker, Duncan, and the ball was just like this. It is flying around. Now I watch basketball, and it's like dribble up the court, 4 guys, you got 1 guy in the middle, and everybody else goes.
It's a 3-point shooting contest.
I'm like, this is fun to watch. I'm like, the great thing about basketball is the ball rotation. But like going into that point, I think football and like basketball are a little not as. You don't have to be as smart. Baseball is more of a thinking man's game when you're watching, football. It's like, you get it. That's why it's just like not everybody likes baseball. It's a little more, you have to think about it.
Yeah.
Yes, it's slower.
For sure.
But
yeah, I mean. And so many things change, right? There's way more games and that kind of plays into.
I mean, I'm a baseball guy. In the dog days of baseball, I'm bored out of my mind.
Yeah. It's such a different pace. It's such a different thought when you're thinking 162 games, and it's one of the great things. And again, we won't go too deep into it. Again, we can do a pod just on that and popularity and the whole deal. But one of the great things about football is that every single game matters. College or pro. Every single football game matters because you've got a very small amount of games, right? You talk about in college, you've got, by and large 12 games in the regular season. And in the NFL now you got 17 games, but every single game matters every single week, right? With basketball, you get 82 games, hockey, you get 81, baseball, you get 162. And so that kind of allows for certain games to really just mail it in. And it doesn't matter. And the whole deal, football is not that way. Football is every single game, every single week matters. And so that's, again, man, that's just one of the many things I love about football. College and pro.
I love the NFL. I'm more a college football guy than the NFL. I love college. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't think there's a lot of people waking up at 9 a.m. Eastern time or 6 a.m. Pacific time to watch college game day. Or the hundreds of thousands of people at 6 a.m. at Cal Berkeley to get up for game. I mean, I love the
NFL. It's so cool, man. It's such a different. It's because of the younger demographic. You're always going to have that element, right? The student section is always going to have a big part to play, in the fandom, right, and the whole deal, and that kind of lends itself to, that kind of thing, right? Where they're up early for game day, right? They were camping out the night before, for a spot on the, on near the set and the whole deal, right? And so that's just one of the great things about college football, man. To me, I always say of all my favorite teams, the University of Miami is number one, and I'd say the NFL overall is probably 1, and then college is like 1A. It's not even 2. And I think maybe that kind of goes back and forth year to year. I love them both, man. Like it'd be hard. Like if you told me I could only watch one for the rest of my life, you have to give me like 48 to 72 hours to decide. Like, what, you know, it would be extremely tough.
I couldn't do that, but I mean,
Yeah.
when it comes to like, I'll sit on my.
I love them both. I love them both.
I'll sit on my butt all Saturday and watch college football.
Ooh,
usually on Sunday, I'll be like, I'll watch one game, turn it off at the afternoon game, come back and watch a little Sunday night game, or like, you know, I'll check in here and there. College football, I'm like, hey, I'm not leaving the couch today.
Yeah. No, listen, when I'm, you know, like I have to tell my girlfriend, right? It's like, hey, listen, you know, like there's football on. she's one of the many football widows, you know, like that exists in this country, right? It's like
it comes around. You're single right now.
Hey, look, you know, between you know, live football, between fantasy, between your favorite teams being on, between me, you know, throwing shit at the TV, for being angry, like it gets to be a lot, and I get it. Like I'm one of those. I'm like, look, I totally understand. I get if you don't want to hang out with me on Saturday or Sunday to do this. I probably don't want to hang out with me either. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to be boring. I'm going to like literally be a you know, just a bulge like on the couch, you know, just yelling at the TV and drinking, you know, like, and I tell her, listen, there's a lot worse vices that I could have. She maybe disagrees. I don't know, but I think there's worse vices that I could
be doing a lot.
Yeah, it'd be a lot. I've been doing a lot worse shit than
you'd be on the corner
watching football,
finding something.
You're right. So
we'll take football all day.
I hate it and I love it, brother. All at the same time. It is the most frustrating shit on the planet. And when everything is good, it is euphoria. And you know, again, man, the people you meet, you know, at games and tailgates and everything like that, dude. Like again, man, it's definitely a love-hate relationship. It's definitely more love than hate. Even given my podcast name, I hate it, but I love it all at the same time. And you know, I'm glad it's not that far from being back. So.
Yeah, this year's flying by, Q. This year,
yeah, dude,
flying
it's
by.
crazy.
We're the middle of June. It's
insane. We're closer to July than we are to the beginning of June.
There's like 10 more. Less than college football is less than. There might be like 10 Sundays till NFL is back.
Something like that. Yeah. I think the Hall of Fame game is first week in August, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. You know, so I mean, it's there. At that point, now you have football every weekend till like, you know, second week in February, I think, for the Super Bowl.
Oh yeah. You know, so people are like, let's go out Saturday. I'm like, yeah. I kind of want to just watch football. I'd rather turn on the TV and listen to sound and not.
It's cheaper. It's cheaper to drink at my place and eat and watch football. So
I'm like, if you want, like, I won't go with if any of my team's playing. I'll watch it with like myself or like when I'm home, my dad, my brother. That's about it. But like, if I'm watching college football, like, yeah, I'll watch college football, but let's not go to a bar. Let's watch at your place. Let's you know.
Listen, man, you go to a bar. You're at a bar for 4 or 5 hours, brother. You spent.
Yeah, I'm from Southern California.
Spend some dough.
Talking like $8-9 just for a beer.
Yeah, you spend some dough at the end of a few hours at a bar, bro. There's no way around it. You spend a couple $100. If it's 3 of you, 4 of you, you spend a couple $100 without a doubt. You know,
and so. I mean, we're just talking beer. We're not talking any.
Yeah. Dude, if you start doing liquor, forget about it, bro. You have to.
And then you're like, oh, I got to eat.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, there's $15 down the drain. Oh, I got to.
If you're doing liquor and like entrees, dude, forget about it. You're gonna spend. You know, you're going to spend. The table's going to spend, you know, a few $100 without a doubt. So it gets pricey.
I mean, honestly, I figured it out now. I'm like, I just go to a bar. I'm like, give me a Yinling. It's $4 at every single bar you go in Florida.
Nice.
I'm like, that's it. I'll get my 2. I'll leave.
Yeah, that's not a bad way to go.
Sometimes I'm like, all right, I got to go out just to go get out of the house.
Of course, yeah. You got to switch it up. Yeah, you got to switch it up every so often, right?
Yeah. Just on. I'm like, I've been kind of like working myself, which is great because I mean, sometimes people suck, but like, all right, I got to go do something now.
Yeah. You got to switch it up every so often, and it's even easier to do it like when your team's like on a bye week or something. Now it's like you don't necessarily care about one specific game. that's kind of what I find myself doing. Like if my team's like on a bye week, I'm like, all right, it's easy. I can just go to a bar and just like switch it up a little bit, and I don't give a shit who wins or whatever. And it's like
100% agree. I'd rather just like I'll go buy a case of beer and sit down on my couch, and I spent $20 on a case of beer or something.
Man. There's no line at the bathroom. You're not yelling for a waitress. You know what I'm saying,
no
man?
line
Like
at the bathroom. I'm like,
it's not terrible, bro.
I don't need to tip someone 20%.
100%. Yeah, exactly.
Or like they're trying to hit me up for tips at Chipotle. I'm like,
yeah, bro. Yeah, like come on, man. You're doing that Chipotle. You're doing your job, man. Shut the hell up.
Hey, don't get. I live off of tips. I don't even get 20%. I live off of it. I mean, and I'm telling you, what I do is I don't even get 20. I get maybe 8%. I mean, I got people. I've done $600 orders and didn't receive anything.
That's crazy.
I mean, and I get it. If the job was done poor, like if I still give a tip. They live off that. Like my waitress is a little rude. I'll dock her a little bit, but I'm not going to give her 20%. I'm like, hey, you're slow. You weren't very nice.
10%.
I'm like, but like,
I consider myself a good tipper also. So it's like, again, you have to be terrible for me to be like, nothing. Like I can't do it. It won't be as much, but I can't just like not leave anything.
Oh no.
I can't do it.
But I'd rather be on the couch. I don't have to tip anybody if I'm at my
100%, bro. 100%. Like I said, man, no line at the bathroom and no line at the bar.
The food might even be better. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna grill up some stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Save myself some money, grill up some stuff. Not this fucking cheap bar food because I'm not. Exactly. You're not sitting down for a nice meal. Mm-hmm. You're at a bar.
Yeah, everything's gonna be fried. Wings, fries, cheese sticks. Which again is I'm good with it.
It's great for a game.
It's definitely not. It's not the healthiest diet, to be on.
But I'd rather make those wings myself and
dude. Yeah. I don't. I'm not gonna win Iron Chef, but I could definitely do. Football food. I could definitely do appetizers and like that's right in my wheelhouse right there. I could definitely do that. I'm good there. That's a comfort level of mine for sure. Without a doubt. So,
I got to get better cooking.
Yeah, hey, repetition, brother. Repetition, man. You get a couple like 2-3 recipes. You perfect those, and you do like a wing, a dip, and do like a rotel dip, Velveeta rotel, some sausage, that kind of thing, some wings, and
I gotta get like easy. I live on a budget, so it's tough. I'm like, I gotta cook better just to be healthier. So hopefully soon, Q, that changes. But I'm getting sick of like buying like a meal. Like I eat this on Monday, I eat something different on Tuesday, then I eat the same thing on Wednesday because I'm like, I got to get rid of it.
Of course, yeah, you don't want it to go to waste.
And I'm like, oh, this is disgusting, but I got to do it. I'm like,
eating to live, not living to eat, right?
No, I'm like, well, I have to. I mean, I remember my college year, I got diagnosed like in college with ADHD, right?
I got you.
And they gave me the first 6 months, they gave me this pill that lasted like 8 hours. It's called Vyvanse. And literally I would go in college, I'd go to eat breakfast, take the pill for classes, go to the cafeteria because I knew I had to. I was like, I probably should go there and eat, have like a bite and be like, I'm good because it takes your appetite away.
Yeah.
I'd literally like, I know I got to go eat right now, but I'm not hungry. I literally came home. My mom started crying because I was down to like
skinny you were?
145 pounds. And just like, I'm like, I'm not hungry.
Exactly. Appetite suppressor. You just don't.
I'm like, I know I should be eating, but what am I going to force feed myself? I'm not hungry.
Yeah. If there's no appetite, there's no appetite. This is what it is. So, but yeah, brother, I think we,
it was another good episode.
I think we reached the end right here, bro. I think our thoughts on the Carson Beck move, I think have been documented. Again, I think I'm on record, and it's not me being a homer. I think the move is going to work out. I think for both parties. I think he's going to be firmly in the first round draft pick discussion, come the 26th draft. And
tough discussion, but
yeah, I think
it could be a tough discussion. Who knows?
Yeah,
like we said, it's all projection.
It's all projection, 100%.
Everybody projecting 26 class is going to be so great. Arch Manning, I'm like,
no,
it's all projection. No one.
Yeah, listen, from everything I've read, and honestly, it's something that I kind of thought of on my own. But from what I've read, there's a lot of chatter out there that Arch isn't really even guaranteed to enter the draft. And when you look at one, what does he need? Family money? Like, his family doesn't need money, right? They're very well off as a family. In terms of what he's making, he's not necessarily making NFL money, but I would imagine he's making double-digit $1 million in terms of NIL, right, with his endorsements, NIL, and all that stuff. So, he'll only have started for a year. So I don't think, I don't think
it's a guarantee.
Yeah, I don't think it's a guarantee, right? With him being happy at Texas, with it being a really crowded quarterback class, and with him not needing the money, I don't know that it's a foregone conclusion that he leaves. And then you're looking at the rest of the class, and I think it'll be a deep quarterback class. But again, I don't think there's any reason to think that Carson Beck, with a really good year at Miami, with a successful year, with a successful run, hopefully into the playoff, I don't see a scenario where Carson Beck isn't in the running for top quarterback overall status. I
see it. If he has a good year, like you think in Miami, I think he'll probably have a good year. Knowing even the offense, yeah, they lost a lot, but the talent they have still, because Miami, even though they lost, they always have talent, athletic kids. Because South Florida, athletic football.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing that, it'll be good. Will he be in the conversation if he goes back to what he was in 2024
in 23?
Georgia?
Yeah, it's 23 season.
Excuse me. Yeah. He's planted in that conversation if he gets back to the form we saw in 2020.
Yeah. And again, it'll be a deep quarterback class. Again, I think a lot of people are hyping guys like Drew Aller, guys like Cade Klubnik. Cade Klubnik is one of those guys, and again, not to get too far off and kind of go right back into it, but Cade Klubnik is to me a guy who listen, he feasted on the not good teams, and against good teams, actually, he wasn't good. So when you're looking at the body of work, if you're looking at the numbers with Cade Klubnik and where the team went in the whole deal, again, I get it. Cool. Fine. But when you do a little deeper dive into those numbers with Cade Klubnik, you'll see that Cade Klubnik against good teams was not good. He was not good. So I am not one of these people who's like, oh my God, Cade Klubnik, as a first pick of the draft.
I'm not a Klubnik guy.
Yeah. Drew Aller, same. It's like, oh my God, Drew Aller. What? Like, seriously?
No, thank you. No, thank you. No, thank you. I'm a Nussmeier. I want to see another year from Sellers. I like Nussmeier from Garrett Nussmeier. 100%. I like Lenore Sellers, but I want to see both those guys have
another year. I need to see another year. Yeah.
Sellers is young. Both those guys are first year starters. Great first year, but they can put it into a second year. But I like Nussmeier.
Sellers is young. Sellers is young. Sellers is talented, but he's young. I need to see another year of him, right? Now that people know him, now that there's tape out on him, now, in the SEC, with a year under his belt, I'm interested to see exactly how he – you got to be excited about the skill set. You got to be excited about the talent. I'm not saying no on Lenore Sellers. I'm just saying give me another year of, of maturation, of development, of improvement, and then I'll believe.
I've seen enough of Drew Aller at Penn State. No, thank you.
Dude, where did the hype for Drew Aller come all of a sudden?
He's huge.
He's a big kid, but he's a 5-star kid who hasn't lived up to the 5-star billing.
It literally came down to he's like in the playoffs. If he has a good playoffs, he can be a top 5 pick.
Yeah, I was like, what?
Did you guys watch?
When that hype started, I was like, Drew Aller from Penn State is going to be a top 5 pick? Like,
they were all over him in the playoffs. Yeah. It was like he's already going back there. Like, if he has a good one, I'm like, yeah, he had a good game. Who they beat? Boise State. He played. I'm like, he didn't look good against Notre Dame. I'm like, the whole was like, did you guys watch any of the games before that? Or you just
made a couple throws? He made a couple throws that I was like, damn, okay. But the body of work. and you're telling me that projects highly to the NFL? Okay.
And he's not the mold of the quarterback you're seeing now. He's just straight in pocket, which Nussmeier kind of that way. I just like
Nussmeier is not fleet of foot by any stretch. Aller, he's not not a complete statue necessarily, but not a guy who you're worried about leaving the pocket, right? Not somebody who's going to threaten you outside of the pocket. He's not a statue per se, but again, not, he wasn't like Cam Ward even. And Cam Ward wasn't Lamar, right? Cam Ward he could get out of the pocket and had short area, quickness. Wasn't a guy who was a 4 or 5 guy, right? In the 40, but who was fleet of foot and short area quick and could get out of the pocket and create and everything like that. But, wasn't super fast, wasn't a Lamar Jackson or wasn't Michael Vick or anything. So man, it'll be really interesting, man. That quarterback class for the 26th draft is going to be interesting. That'll be one that I'm sure we'll talk more about. There's going to be a lot of intriguing names in that class.
Bobby's salivating already.
He's already got 100%.
Bobby's already got his draft talk going. He's
100%. He's like, man, he's like, I got the Google Doc going. It's ever changing. It's he's adjusting it now as we speak. I'm sure. So he's always working, always prepping for the next draft. Our guy Bobby. So, but yeah, man, it'll be an interesting draft class. Hopefully, after a really fun and intriguing college football season, like I'm sure we're gonna have. But yeah, man, there it is, man. Those are our thoughts on Carson Beck. Those are our thoughts on several other things. So for everybody that tuned in, man, we appreciate it. Thank you so much, for tuning in. Thank you so much to Bobby and everybody at FTSN Extra. Follow all the channels on there. Everybody putting out some really good talent. You got my guy Russ Morgan, with Russ on Deck. Myself with the I Hate Football podcast. Bobby with Finch Talk and Steve Malloy and the East 10th Street Boys, and everybody, man, on both networks, man, doing good stuff and putting out good content, man. Subscribe to everybody and tune in, and we look forward to seeing everybody really, really soon. Russ, you got anything else?
Nah, dude, this was you got nothing. That was a good send off. Good night. Always great talking football with you, Q.
Sure, brother, for sure. We appreciate it. Definitely, man. We'll do it again here really soon. We'll see everybody soon. And for my boy Russ, I am Q, and we will talk to you guys really, really soon, guys. Have a good night.